Hi, Emma.
Hi, Dean. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's beautiful here in North Carolina today. Emma, first, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Emma Blackmore. I am currently a fractional CMO. I've spent the last 15 years or so working in London, New York, and Sweden. And in my particular case, I create full stack marketing strategies for founders and SMEs that
Hmm.
can grow revenue from the ground up. A lot of my clients in particular have little to no marketing infrastructure in place.
Mm.
And then in some cases, I manage the marketing team, if they have one, to execute it, and even bring in a vetted team of experts that stack. So I truly have a large network of brilliant experts that I bring in when needed.
It's a valuable resource. Uh,
Yes, absolutely.
Coming from someone who is one of those, not for your firm, but for like my whole business model is to be in the Rolodex of a lot of fractional CMOs. That's a great business model, by the way. You just work with a lot of weird characters. These fractional CMOs are.
Weird slash interesting, I suppose. A more diplomatic way of putting it.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Emma, so welcome to Fractional CMOs and the 90-day win. What's a fractional CMO? And what do you like to do in like the first 90 days when you start on a new engagement?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dean, because I think the blended workforce is growing and there are so
Mhm.
many terms that really fit into the blended workforce. You've got fractional, freelance, interim, and the list just continues. And of course, the solopreneur that seems to encompass all of those terms. For me, I really interpret a fractional CMO as a chief marketing officer who works on a part time or project basis, really providing that strategic marketing leadership. Typically, to multiple companies without being a full-time employee at any particular organization. And this allows businesses, in my case, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, to really access high-level marketing expertise without the cost and the commitment of hiring a full-time executive.
Right.
And I think a good fractional CMO should offer a unique blend of flexibility, experience, and adaptability as well, which really makes them or should make them a valuable asset for businesses who are looking to grow and thrive in what is typically a competitive marketplace.
All right. And so in the first 90 days, what sort of problems do you normally see?
I think the first point is, when I come in to provide strategic marketing leadership on a part-time or project
Mhm.
basis, I really look first and foremost to align with the key stakeholders. So identifying who they are and forming an alliance with them to understand the company's goals, the vision, and of course their unique value proposition. But also more importantly, and I sometimes see this is where things go wrong, is looking at how the commercial objectives define and drive the marketing output. Typically, when I work with these small to medium sized enterprises, I will conduct a thorough audit of the existing marketing initiatives and then looking at their channels as well to identify, of course, a SWOT analysis and work from there. It's amazing how many businesses I initially start to engage with who will say, we don't need an audit. We don't have anything to audit. We've just been around for 6 months or a year.
Mhm.
It's limited. And I always say there's always something to audit, and we always need to understand what you have done to then make the right choices moving forward.
Right.
And that really informs, I think, a comprehensive marketing strategy and roadmap to implement often a lot of, quick win initiatives, but then also longer term initiatives down the road as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Jim, hi.
Hey Dean, hi.
How's New York?
New York is really hot today, really hot. Heat advisory, so probably something we're used to in North Carolina all the time, but it's really hot here today.
Yeah, it's the time of year in North Carolina where it gets very humidy. Okay, humidity is not a word, and I'm a writer, and I already feel bad about that. That's going to haunt me all day now. Fabulous. So, Jim, tell folks a little bit about you and what do the first sort of 90 days look like for you, or really yeah, kind of not that you are, but a typical fractional CMO just kicking off with a new client.
Sure, yeah. So by way of intro, my name is Jim Anstey. I'm a fractional CMO. My consulting company is called BKLY, which is a combination of Brooklyn, New York, and Berkeley, California. I started off in the agency world. I worked for Saatchi and Saatchi in London, and then moved to New York. And after an agency world, I worked as CMO for Havaianas, the Brazilian flip-flops. And not due to me, but I happened to be running the CMO for them when they became a $1 billion brand. And then 2016, I left the kind of corporate world and moved into the cannabis space. And I think from a fractional CMO basis, really cannabis is a great industry to be in. It's dominated by lots of sort of small to mid-sized companies, all of whom need marketing help. So
Right.
that's me.
And what do the first 90 days look like typically for you?
Yeah, I think for me, every client is different, and every client has a different size business, different problems to solve, different budgets, different team. So I kind of have 3 phases which I do across everything. The first phase is really insight. So probably normally it's the first couple of weeks to month is really insight. And that really goes through in terms of really understanding the client's business, understanding who are the investors, what's the key problem to solve, what's the marketing team in place currently, and really dig into the data. So sales data, consumer research data, just really trying to understand the business, getting under the sort of the hood to really understand what's going on the business. So that's the sort of first phase. Then it's the strategy phase, which is normally the fun part that we all love as marketing people, sort of ideating, but really the marketing plan, which can be a variety of different things, from content to digital to all sorts of what is the overarching marketing plan. And I think marketers get sometimes tie themselves not around what the marketing plan is, but it's really how do you get from A to B? What is the results expected when you get to B? What are the key milestones along the way? What is the budget that you need to achieve that along the way? What's the team that you need in place to do that? So it's really putting all those things together and kind of breaking down the milestones in terms of digital marketing, in terms of what are the sort of key kind of tactical efforts required along that way too. So hopefully the first 90 days will include the insight, the strategy, and get into implementation, again, depending upon the size of the problem and what we have. But implementation really comes into, again, that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of implementing the marketing plan. So the first 90 days, that's normally, you have the team in place, you have everyone pointed in the right direction, everyone knows the budget, everyone knows their expectations, and we started to, the creative processes already started by then, but we're starting to get output and starting to hopefully see the results after 90 days.
All right. So imagine that I'm the CEO then, Jim, of the client, right? How am I going to get, I probably had to convince somebody, if only myself, to allocate the spend for 12 months of a fractional CMO, right? How am I going to squeeze maximum value? How do I get every last penny of value out of that 12 months?
Sure. I mean, and my clients do. Cannabis industry is definitely constrained in terms of budgets, in terms of very heavily taxed, in terms of so really it's about I think key relationship with the CEO is really communication. Just I suppose like any relationship, it's really understanding what are those key issues to really bring me on board and bring me up to speed as fast as possible to understand some of the key issues. I agree with kind of what Emma was saying earlier, and sometimes you rely on other people to update you, but you also need to do a bit of digging. So really, the CEO needs to allow me to sort of to do the digging, to ask the right questions, the right people, and allow full access to the business to really get the most out of it. So I think that's absolutely key in that. And then the budget front too. As I said, the cannabis industry is really constrained in terms of budget and capital. So you're looking regular industries. You're probably looking to get kind of 3 to 4 times kind of ROAS or return on investment. Cannabis industry's got to be near to 7. So it's really working to work with the CEO to really understand what the budget is, how hard that budget has got to work, and to help actually to get from A to B and to deliver those results in time. So I think that working with the CEO to really understand budgets, to really make sure those budgets are available, to make sure communication is there. Those are some of the key things that I recommend to get maximum value.
All right, Amanda, I want to. I'm sorry, Emma. It's been a long day. It's already been a long day. I'm very sorry, Emma. So I want to invert that question. All right, you've worked with enough clients now at this point.
Yeah.
How does a company hire a fractional CMO and then waste that money, some or all of it?
Well, I think building on what Jim's saying, I really echo a lot of those sentiments. I think communication is absolutely key to make sure that you're making the best spend or getting the best bang for your buck, really. I often find that I become a trusted confidant to the CEO or the C-suite team. And I think that as a whole, CEOs and organizations at large who prioritize the integration of fractional CMOs into their company culture to, foster a more cohesive and value-driven partnership are really the ones that allow them to get maximum value. I think, Jim, you made an excellent point about actually letting the CMO just get on with the job, having access to the data, and being clear on sort of, the goals of the organization. I think as a fractional, I speak a lot about the blended workforce, and it is growing. And I think many forward-looking companies, are helping fractional workers understand and embrace company culture. So you've got the likes of Johnson and Johnson, for example, who really recognize that their purpose, their values, and their credo initially shape how employees interact and how work is done. So for them, they offer fractionals the same level of in-depth introduction that they afford their full-time employees. And I think that's absolutely vital. Even though you are fractional and you're coming in to perhaps support 1, 2, 3 days a week in a given month, you're still expected to deliver the results. And the only way to really do that is to get into the organization, to build that trust, to have that transparency. And I mean, Salesforce is another really good example. They onboard their permanent employees and their fractionals together using their culture in a box process. So I think that's just one step in the right direction. I think also, just building on Jim, what you said about constrained budgets. I think, a lot of the SMEs and founder-led businesses that I work with will have very tight budgets, sometimes no budgets at all. And it's really the responsibility of the fractional CMO to, in many respects, and I think this goes before the CMO even starts their 90-day or 1 year engagement, to really educate the client. Because what I have found very often, Dean, is that when I start to speak to a prospect client, they think they know what they need or what they want from marketing, but actually they have little to no idea. And it's the CMO's responsibility to actually help steer them in the right direction and educate. I
Let's
don't like
talk about that workforce then. I
Yeah.
have a question now because we talked about you mentioned it a little bit before. So I'm the CEO still. I'm almost done with my tenure as CEO of this hypothetical company, I think. But I'm looking at my staffers, right? I have at least one, depending on the size of the company. I have somebody who works in marketing. There's a team if it's a team of one, or there's a department, right? How is that marketing function? How's that team going to be different or better at the end of the year? With at the end of 12 months, once a fractional CMO has been in place, how are they
Yeah.
different? How are they better?
Are you talking about the marketing team specifically, Dean, or the team
The
as a
team,
whole?
their effectiveness, the team as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, when you come in as a fractional CMO in particular, and you're just there for, a set number of days in any given month or year, it's certainly not about competing with the existing team. I think it's about, developing and bringing the marketing team along with you. Very often as a fractional, you are being brought in by the C-suite because you have a level of expertise and experience to bring to the table. So it's about really sort of bridging those gaps with the team in place and looking at how you can upskill as a collective one. I mean, for me personally, having worked for 15 years across a variety of different sectors and industries, different size businesses, I've had the great fortune of being able to work with some fantastic vendors, or I call them a vetted team of experts, really, who are specialists in their specific areas. So that allows me to pull on different resource for different projects, rather than having to necessarily always rely on a permanent in-house member of staff. So we can really sort of upscale and be quite lean in how we execute and deliver, which is often very, very important for the types of businesses that I work with, who are small, who need to ideate fast and see results quickly.
Okay. Jim, I have a question, and I'm not trying to be rude.
Love it.
There are easier ways to make a living, dude, right?
Yeah.
Why do this?
True. And why do it in the cannabis industry, which has got to be one of the toughest
There you
industries
go.
as well? I love a challenge. What can I tell you? I think starting off with, why be a fractional CMO? Specifically in the cannabis industry, if I can focus on that, because that's
Sure.
where I am. It's a very fast-growing industry. To give you an idea, in New York State, it was about $100 million in sales last year, and the legal industry anyway. And it's going to be about $3 billion in about 3 years' time. So that's what 30 times growth. So it's a huge, fast-growing business, and I always, think it's good to be in a growing business that's growing, not declining. But I think also too, it's got a huge amount of different companies from tech through to just cultivation, through to processing, through to retail, all of whom have a lot of marketing challenges. So there's a lot of work to be done in the space there as well. For me, I'm interested in that space and working with a lot of different companies because there's no brands, there's no Coca-Cola, Budweiser,
Right.
so it's white space at this stage. And I think, opportunities for growth, the obviously marketing is a key element to help companies do that. So it is really tough. Budgets, as Emma was saying, can be really tight. You have to work really hard for your money because of the tax situation and the fact that it's a legal business on a federal level in the US. So there are a lot of challenges, but I enjoy the challenge. It's really great to see an industry growing, and I think with cannabis, hopefully the world will be a happier place.
That's excellent. Thank you. So, Emma, I have a different question. All right. Imagine sort of a scenario. Imagine that someone comes to you and they say, like, they've known you for a while, and they say, Emma, so like, you've told me 4 times what you do. I don't quite understand it. It's something about marketing and like running something in marketing, and that's why I'm talking to you today. My kid just started their first full-time job. They just graduated and they're starting their career in marketing. They're the most junior marketer on a marketing team. You're at sort of at the top of that now. They're at the very bottom. Like, do you have any advice for someone just starting out in marketing and what the next 20, 30 years could look like? What to do right now?
Yeah, well, I would say, don't specialize. I think marketing moves at the speed of light. I think getting an understanding if you're starting out, whether that is just graduating from, high school and going off to university to undertake a degree, God forbid it should be in marketing, hopefully it's in something else. And really get a lay of the land. I think, going off to specialize in something, we've got so many different areas at the moment. So many of the specialists that I work with will focus on, SEO specifically or PPC, whatever it might be. But God knows what's going to be around in the next 10 years. So I think keeping an open mind and trying to get an overarching understanding of how marketing works and functions is really important. I myself am a generalist marketeer. I work for many different types of businesses. For a long time, I sort of saw that as a disadvantage, but I quickly realized as the world was moving to more of a fractional model, especially during the lockdown period, that it was serving me in good stead, and I was able to apply a lot of the processes and principles that I learned with working with different size businesses, sector and industry agnostic, that I could apply a lot of the frameworks to many of the businesses that I am working with today. A number of fractional CMOs will also tell you that it's better to specialize. Jim, clearly, you are specialized. You're in the cannabis, sector specifically. I am not, but I think there is still a lot to be learned with sort of, being able to identify challenges and opportunities and looking at them rather holistically. But that said, I think back to Jim's, earlier point, each business is a snowflake. There isn't a one size fits all, and any marketer who tries to just, shove the same framework onto one is not right either.
I absolutely agree. Okay, so this is episode 85 of this podcast and season 4. And in season 4, the questions change a bit every season. And in season 4, we're doing something where we have a wild card question as we sort of work our way out of the episode. And so I'm going to give you first crack. So you can ask Jim a question, and Jim will ask you a question in return. It can be whatever you want about being a fractional CMO, about clients, about crazy clients. But how he finds clients, whatever you want.
Crazy clients, what are those, Dean? We don't have any.
Nobody has those.
Well, Jim, I'm going to ask you a question that often keeps me up at night, and I think we perhaps work with, some similar sized businesses. So I guess I wonder, how do you balance the need for strategic, long-term thinking with the desire for quick wins and tangible results, especially when you're working with small businesses that often require, rapid growth?
That's a great question, because that is always the balance. Because I think as as a marketer, you try to think longer term and try and think a little bit far on ahead. But normally, the consulting periods I normally start with 3 months or a 6 month, and then extend it after that. But so you have a sort of 6 month runway to make progress. And as you know, if depending upon the problem, it can take a while to build a brand, to change perception, and to do that. So what I try and do is lay the foundation for a longer term kind of structure, in terms of build the team in place and kind of get everyone pointing in the right direction. And I think getting the team on board and really excited about kind of working with you is a key thing. But then I should try for small early wins. And quite often, I think the most important people to sort of to assure along the way is the CEO. It's some key decision maker, some investors. And by doing, I think, quite often small events, and they can be really kind of internal events sometimes, in terms of getting everyone on board with the strategy and the plan, to being kind of consumer events, are very tangible, very visible ways to make kind of progress in a short amount of time. So I try and make sure that there are a few events sprinkled in early on, so that people can really kind of see and touch and feel the progress. So that's kind of one trick that I've learned along the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I just want to add to that, you're absolutely right. I think, I very often try to, lay the groundwork or framework for success, a roadmap for success, really, but always pepper it with some, quick wins or actionable that are, that a company is able to really run with from the get-go. So that, exactly.
Jim, what's your question?
Yeah, I think, quite often it's understanding, when you have a call with a client, if they are going to be a good client, for a good match for you or not, and if they are, if it's a viable target. So what are some of the questions you ask when you are initially, kind of interviewing the client? They're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them to find out if they're a real prospect or not. What are some of the most useful questions you found to understand that?
You know what? This is a great question, because I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this the other day. Not this question specifically, but sometimes it's not even about asking questions. Sometimes it's about, I think integrity for me is really, really important. So sometimes not asking too many questions and seeing how a potential client actually responds to, for example, you might have had a series of conversations with the C-suite, with the rest of the team. You've put together a proposal, you've discussed the proposal at great lengths, potentially, and then crickets. I think that in and of itself is a really fascinating time period to see how and if this is a prospective client that you want to work with. How do they respond? How do they engage? It's a two-way street. There should be a mutual fit. I think that says a lot. So I think that's one point. I think a second point is really sort of understanding. I mean, I think you get a feel for it, going with the gut as well. Just understanding, how accessible, is the CEO going to be, or whoever the key stakeholders are that you need access to potentially, that you're going to be working with. What resources do you have to work with? If it's a startup, perhaps an MVP stage, what does their potential runway look like? Are you talking about a month? Well, if so, then there's probably not much point in producing a marketing plan and strategy that's going to stretch 3 months or 6 months. So is it the right job for you? So some of those are the key points that I would look at. But I think integrity is a key one, really.
Fantastic. All those are great. I'd only add, there's something sometimes I think all those are really good points, but one thing I'd add is sometimes a knowledge and understanding of the role of marketing and the importance of marketing and the sort of valuation of that, I think, is key. And some knowledge, and sometimes when I ask clients, who is their target audience, and they say, well, everyone. Automatically that the marketing is probably not something which they have a grasp on. So those sort of things, that helps to sort of to understand a prospect and if they could be a good client.
Yeah, I think so. But I will challenge you on that one and just say, I think, I have a client at the moment that I'm working with who is a relatively young startup. And, do they understand marketing? Debatable. They have a CPO in place. They have their CEO, of course. But they haven't done, the basics. They haven't even defined their North Star metric. They haven't gone out and done the customer research and defined their customer profiles and the personas and ultimately the market language fit. And I think you see this so often, with companies, small, medium, and large, who are kind of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, investing in paid acquisition channels, but not actually knowing sort of who the customer is, where they're at the right time, that marketing equation. And I think in many respects, it is our role as a CMO or fractional CMO to help, going back to that point of to educate the client and help them along the way. So I don't think you always expect them necessarily to understand what the role of marketing necessarily is. But that's just my take.
True, you're right. I mean, then the even more realization that the fact that they realize they need a fractional CMO is probably a good step. So that's a good point. The fact that they're willing to learn and 100% willing to learn, willing to get on board with that program. I suppose the comment I make about that is when you say who are your key customers, and they can break it down into three profiles, 3 personas, automatically you think, oh, okay, they've thought this through there. And again, I think marketing process to find out if they're right or wrong, or if there's a new customer demographic that could be more interesting, or maybe it's a different profile. But yeah, no, those are all good points.
Can I add one more point to that? I just want to say as well, because Dean, you mentioned, it's when a client has realized that they need a CMO, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find also that a client or a prospect isn't actually clear on what a CMO does to begin with. So sometimes what they're actually looking for is a head of marketing, or they're looking for a specialist in a specific area, or they're expecting you as a CMO to come in and really be rolling up the sleeves in every facet of the business, and they're sort of expecting you to do the copywriting and managing the social media channels and everything else. So I think there's certainly a piece around that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Emma, who should contact you these days, and how do they get to you?
Yeah, small to medium-sized enterprises, founder-led businesses. I think revenue of in itself is not too important. Typically profitable businesses, but I do work with some early stage startups as well. They can find me on LinkedIn, Emma Blackmore. They can also find me on my website, emma-blackmore.com.
All right. And Jim, who should be reaching out to you right now? How do they get
yeah, I mean, I'm really focused on the cannabis industry, so it's really kind of small to mid-sized cannabis companies who have normally understand the issues with finance and compliance, but the real key to growth for them is marketing. So it's they probably can't afford to hire a full-time kind of senior marketing person in-house, but they need someone that can really help them navigate what is a tricky industry and bring best practices to bear and everything else that fractional CMOs bring.
All right. Well, Emma and Jim, has been great. Thank you very much for being here. It's kind of, you guys have had a lot to say. It's been fantastic. Some people just sort of want to dispense and answer the questions, but you guys, a lot of color. I love that. Okay. So thank you, Emma, and thank you, Jim. And thanks for watching. The analytics tell us anything. There's a 99+% chance you're actually watching a clip and not the whole episode, but there's a whole episode and a whole bunch of clips as well. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining, everyone. And we'll see you next time.